Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Cradle News Roundup, your one-stop shop for all news West Asia. My name is Esteban Carrillo. I am the news editor for the Cradle, and as usual, I'm joined by my colleagues, content creator and writer for the Cradle, Karim Shami, and columnist and editor for the Cradle, Sharmin Narwani. And before we start, please, we just want to remind you to leave a like, to share this video, to subscribe to our channel, to find us on our other social media platforms, and to check out our Patreon, where you can become a supporter of the Cradle and where this week you will find an extra segment of discussion, the details of which we will go over in a bit into this episode. So as we start recording this, it's about 24 hours or maybe even less before US President Donald Trump arrives in West Asia for a visit that includes Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, and most importantly, I would say, not Israel yet. He's not set to visit Israel yet. This all comes under the context of what Hebrew media and Western media have been kind of hammering over the past several days, that there's a rift. There's a rift between President Trump and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and we have seen indications, or even many people will say direct evidence of this rift over the past week. From the one-sided ceasefire with the Yemenis, one-sided meaning Israel, or I guess just two-sided because Israel is the one that got completely left out of this deal. Yemen still allowed to attack Israel under the terms of the ceasefire with the U.S. The continuation of the Iran talks, the direct talks between the U.S. and Hamas that have led to the upcoming release of the last remaining surviving U.S. captive in Gaza, and the delinking, according to Reuters, of Israeli normalization for the U.S. to provide Saudi Arabia with help developing their civilian nuclear program, right? So all of these things, just one after the other, have been happening over the past several days. We'll go over all of them and in our discussion. But what do you guys make of this? And I know in particular, Shermin, this is something that you've been talking about since I think Trump got elected. You've been saying at some point, Trump is going to get fed up with Netanyahu because, Netanyahu is just used to doing things the way he sees fit with absolutely no input, no consideration for what happens. And we saw that with Joe Biden, right? Like, if anybody needed evidence of this, just look at the Joe Biden presidency, especially post October 7, 2023. You've been saying Donald Trump is not going to go for that. And for the first few months, it didn't seem like things were much going to change much. But then they seem to have started to change. Is this actually, what you predicted, or do you think this is just, a geopolitical theater of sorts?
Well, Esteban, as you know, I don't have a crystal ball, but I think the fact is that these two men have monstrous egos and play heavily to their domestic and international audiences. I think taking those things, taking public relations into consideration, almost more than actual policy or strategy, suggests that when interests diverged at any point, that we would see this colossal clash of the egos.
Of
And
egos, yeah.
yeah, and I think that's where we are now. Now, of course, anything that we read in the Western media, I always take with a pinch of salt. So let's just say it's possible that they're setting a scene. The two parties are in cahoots, setting a scene so that Trump and Israel can do their own things during this critical period. Okay. Uh, Trump doesn't want to be seen green lighting the genocide in Gaza. And so he can pretend to pick a fight with Netanyahu and leave Netanyahu to his own devices to do what he wants. So, let's always keep something like that in consideration. I think our first big sign, I mean, this was a real shocker that when the U.S. just out of nowhere, after pounding Yemen, civilian targets in Yemen for weeks on end, out of nowhere, declared that they had come to an agreement with the Yemenis and the U.S. would stop hitting Yemen. And
And
of
just
course,
just hours after Israel destroys their airport, like just a couple of hours after Israel comes and destroys
yeah,
Sana'a airport.
Yeah, yeah. So it looked like Trump just didn't want to play in that game anymore. I think I've said this on the podcast before that Yemen, Trump views global South countries as shitholes. Let's be honest. And for him, Yemen was low hanging fruit, right, compared to an Iran, let's say. But he's learned very quickly what Joe Biden learned himself, that you can't defeat Yemen, and so don't pick a fight with him. So Trump wanted out. Where did that leave Israel? As you mentioned, Esteban, completely alone. You know, and let's not forget that Yemen is, with Iran, a key node of the resistance axis today. This is something that became very, very apparent after October 7th because there was no country, Arab state that stood up for Gaza in the way Yemen did. It sort of outshone every single player in this region, including the axis that it belongs to. Now it turns out that the US has directly negotiated with Hamas for the release of this soldier, captive soldier. And the Hebrew media is reporting that Israel was not aware of the contacts to release this fellow and was not at all involved in the negotiations. Initially, like a month or so ago, we'd heard that the Americans had spoken directly to Hamas, and that became an embarrassment for Trump, and they backtracked from it. This time it's out in the open, and Israel was out in the cold on this as well. We even have the U.S. envoy to this region, Steve Witkoff, saying, as Israel Channel 12 reported, we want to bring the hostages back, but Israel doesn't want to end the war. That's a divergence of goals, I think. Now, Witkoff is set to make this trip to Israel that Trump does not want to make. He's going to Israel with the team to discuss God knows what. Okay. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth was supposed to go to Israel, was redirected to accompany Trump to the Persian Gulf on his Persian Gulf tour instead. What kind of sign is that? Well, let's not forget that the Trump administration just axed Mike Waltz, who had colluded with, was discovered had colluded with Netanyahu to bring about war against Iran, before Trump even met with Netanyahu in the famous Oval Office meeting. And Pete Hegseth is a, big fat Zionist to Israel firster all the way. So maybe they're now watching their backs. The White House is now watching its back on like which of its appointees, because they only have a pool of ex-Republicans, and some of these guys are war hawks, and it's not what Trump is, but he got these guys in. Now he's watching them carefully and directing their roles carefully. Other key areas of divergence are the nuclear deal. Basically, any deal with Iran is just anathema to Netanyahu. Also, Palestinian statehood. We now have reports that the White House has just put Palestinian statehood back on the table. He is, as you mentioned, going to land in the Persian Gulf tomorrow, and he wants to extract maximum cash from them.
Hmm. 1 trillion
Reportedly,
from
one
Saudis.
$1 trillion, but he has to give them something in return, and something
To
significant. Because
he's
nobody will any longer trust a mere US promise. "Oh, Palestinian statehood, I'll say the words."
Mm.
No, there's gotta be an actual plan, otherwise the Saudis will, eat dirt in the months and years to come. Yeah, go ahead, what were you gonna say?
I just wanted to add that tomorrow he's set to meet with MBS, with
Yeah,
Mahmoud Abbas from the Palestinian Authority, the president of Lebanon, Joseph Aoun, and the jet-setting president of Syria, Ahmad al-Shara. All of them, all four of them,
it's
Trump is meeting
crazy. He's
tomorrow.
gonna meet the
Yeah,
the the most, disliked Palestinian leader in history. He's going to meet with the head of Al-Qaeda, in Sham. He's, it's fine. Let him do that. He'll see what a shit show. He's
it
and
is.
but
Uh,
there's the other thing, the optics for Trump. We know he doesn't like to lose. He wants to win. He wants everyone to like him. He warned Netanyahu that he had awful optics before Trump became president.
yeah, true.
And right now we're seeing starvation on the scale we have not seen in this genocide before.
Mhm.
with
For sure.
no aid forthcoming. Okay. And Netanyahu just now admitted that he's trying to destroy as many houses as possible so civilians cannot return to them in Gaza and will be like, urged to leave instead. I mean, he's admitted to a war crime basically. This is getting worse and worse. I just want to maybe talk about the Israeli. Well, actually, Karim, let's hear from you on this before I go into what the
Yeah.
Hebrew media is saying about Netanyahu.
Yeah, I agree with Sharmeen. I think the clash has started, but I think both countries they have the same goal. As CNBC News published yesterday, both have the same goal. For instance, the United States and Israel, they don't want Iran to have a nuclear weapon, despite if Iran wants to produce one. But for instance, it's saying that the way, according to Netanyahu and Israel, is to bomb their facilities, while the United States prefer a deal. Same thing in Gaza. The United States doesn't want Hamas in Gaza, but they think they can negotiate. They can ask the Egyptians or other factions to support their viewpoint, while Israel view no Hamas means destroy all of Gaza. And also in the article they mentioned that Trump was pissed because he said that he wants to rebuild Gaza, and what Netanyahu is doing, and said yesterday that he wants to bomb and to destroy more facilities or more buildings in Gaza, which will make it also difficult for the United States, according to Trump, to rebuild Gaza. So now they are clashing, although they have the same foreign policy. But how to dictate this foreign policy is the problem between Netanyahu and Trump currently.
I read that article, Karim. Actually, you sent it to me, and I remember thinking, "Oh my God, the Cradle's setting the narratives well before the major media." We really have been talking about this for a long time and breaking it down. It's not like a wish list. It's breaking it down as to why these things will happen, based on our analysis, and the directions we're seeing in this region. To go back to our discussion about the Israel-US dogfight that is now in play big time. Uh, Mariv, the Hebrew language daily, writes that Netanyahu is in Israel increasingly isolated, and mu some of this because he's been, there's a large amount of reservists who will not come back to fight. There's, I think 10% of the Israeli, um, uh, army is now, you know, diagnosed with severe PTSD and will not participate. The religious right, refuse to participate. His
Mhm.
numbers are dwindling. They saw every time there's a ceasefire, they got hostages back, and then Netanyahu would start a fight again and the hostage flow stopped. So, you know, increasingly this narrative that Netanyahu will drag Israel into the abyss, um, in order to stay out of prison, and avoid his court cases has taken hold in Israel. And as we reported 2 weeks ago, that three former Israeli prime ministers warn about an impending civil war in Israel. So Netanyahu is increasingly isolating the country. Now he's being sidelined by his number one ally, Trump, who's pursuing deals in West Asia with Yemen, with Iran, and with Saudi Arabia without Israel's input whatsoever. So Mariv says Trump's disregard for detail, he's eager for a quick win. Um, it could actually result in a nuclear deal with Iran that Israel can not influence in the least. The Israel's army radio, their diplomatic correspondent just said, quote, Trump has decided to cut off communications with Netanyahu. This may change later, but it is the current situation. And Trump's circle told Israel's strategic affairs minister, Ron Dermer, that what Trump hates most is being portrayed as naive or manipulated, and that Netanyahu was manipulating the US president. This has definitely been a narrative we've seen since Israel violated the Gaza ceasefire and started to do exactly what it wants. Um, Also interesting was Friday's op-ed piece in the New York Times by Thomas Friedman. Thomas Friedman was no friend of Trump. He'll be viewed as like a useless liberal by the White House. But he says he is a prominent American Jew, has covered Israeli affairs for a really long time, and he says in the newspaper of record in the United States, um, in an article titled, quote, "This Israeli government is not our ally." And he
Imagine
says in
that.
there basically what um, you know, I just the Mariv guys said. He says, quote, he he meaning Netanyahu, he did think Friedman's writing to Trump basically. Okay, dear Mr. President, this Israeli administration is not our ally. And he says in quotes, he did think he could make you his chump, which is why I'm impressed by how you have signaled to him through your independent negotiations with Hamas, Iran, and the Houthis that he has no purchase on you, that you will not be his patsy. It clearly has him in a panic. What was interesting to me is that other than encouraging Trump to bypass Netanyahu, getting a green light from, a very prominent pro-Israel but liberal segment of the US Jewish population, um, it also suggests to me something that we've noted even during the Gaza war when the optics were getting really, really bad for Israel. Will there be a coup to unseat Netanyahu? And will the Americans drive that coup? I mean, if during the Biden administration, remember they were cozying up to Gantz and Gallant and others and trying to,
The only moderates in Israel,
yeah,
that's
I
what they
mean,
call
they're
them.
not. They're absolutely raging, genocidal beasts. But for the Americans, they were more packageable. The optics would look better than
Yeah, less
crazy
disliked
Netanyahu.
than
Yeah,
Netanyahu. Yeah.
yeah. But they're also not remotely as powerful as Netanyahu. They can't
Mm-mm.
like snap their fingers and have like militants come on the street and do their bidding. So, my question is, will Trump, this administration, lead a coup against Benjamin Netanyahu? He will have support from many prominent US Jews and many Israelis, because he could then potentially set US Israel relations back on track. However, let's say this is done seamlessly. Everyone's happy that Netanyahu's out of the picture. They can pretend now that there's no genocide going on because Netanyahu is not the prime minister. But
Yeah.
this could also set off the Israeli civil war because Netanyahu's right wing Jewish militants and extremists are not going to take this sitting down. They are well armed by Ben Gavir, the police
Uh-huh.
chiefs and all the people who've lined up under the national security apparatus in Israel, where, that Netanyahu has dismissed a lot of the people who helm these organizations and try to put in his own minions, right? So these guys are not going to sit back quietly. Havoc could ensue in Israel if there's a coup against Netanyahu. But it is a possibility. This is the only way I think forward for the Trump administration not to get into a unholy clash with Netanyahu that then becomes a US clash with Israel. Sideline Netanyahu, put relations back on track. But overall, the dogfight between Bibi and Donnie, okay, is one thing I think our viewers and ourselves at the Cradle will be looking for is, what to look out for is potentially a wholly US imposed Gaza ceasefire, completely bypassing the Israeli government. And now I'm going to quote my last thing, I promise. Israel Hayom, citing Arab and American diplomats, says that there's a very high probability that President Donald Trump will soon announce a comprehensive solution to the Gaza issue, including a framework for a deal to end the war. This discussion um, will entail a long-term solution for the Gaza Strip, including reconstruction and determining who controls it, with the U.S. playing a pivotal role in this context. And it also, Hamas's leadership was urgently summoned to Cairo, which is where I expect the direct U.S. Hamas talks have been going on. And the primary effort there is now focused on them to enable Trump to announce the solution and deal before his visit. I don't know that that will happen because he's leaving for the Persian Gulf tomorrow, but it could be a big coup for any Persian Gulf capital if Trump decides to announce a solution to Gaza. Um, and this solution is only, importantly, this is what Israel Hayom says, is only being formulated with the most minimal and partial Israeli participation and does not necessarily meet all of its demands, which are always plenty. And among the options, they say, is to give Hamas a promise to participate in the future civil administration of the Strip, which Hamas itself has said, that's okay, we don't have to do that, okay? So I imagine it may entail also them retaining weapons. It
They did
also
say that the U.S. dropped their demand for disarmament. That was one of the other reports.
We've heard
Uh,
that, but there's been no confirmation. Also, there's no confirmation of any of this. To be
no,
honest, I read this in the Arabic press first. I think it was Egyptian diplomats, leaking it to the media. But now you have the Israeli media putting, putting some credibility into these Arab media reports. So it's very interesting. But Israel Hayom says if an agreement of this kind is actually reached, it will be presented to Israel as a fait accompli,
yeah.
and Netanyahu will have to, quote, deal with it.
Deal with it. So let
Deal
me
with
go
it.
over a couple of things before I let you go, Karim, because I think it's worth mentioning, especially in the context of what the U.S. plan entails, right? Like the U.S. says
Mm.
it's doing its own kind of ceasefire deal. This includes the delivery of aid, right? Last week, the United States government sets up this foundation called the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, based in Geneva, that is going to be run by a bunch of executives and CEOs of like Mastercard and you name the company, former World Food Kitchen CEO, etc. This foundation, what it's going to do, and we're already seeing it happen in the south of Gaza, in Rafah, right, where the Rafah used to exist, that has been completely flattened, and the Israeli army is building these quote unquote distribution hubs that are allegedly going to be run by the same mercenary companies that ran the Netzarim corridor during the
Mm.
Israeli withdrawal from Gaza. So you have US and Egyptian contractors from UG Solutions and Safe Reach Solutions. They are going to come in and handle the aid distribution at this site, which is meant to help like about 60% of Gaza. They're talking about, not even the entire population. The issue with this, and here's where for me the biggest question mark about this whole rift comes from, is that first of all, this is a plan that is backed by the Israeli government. Second of all, this is a plan that calls for Palestinians to go to the south of the strip if they want to receive any aid. So essentially, forcibly displacing them by using starvation. And then Netanyahu explains in a meeting of the Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee yesterday that receiving the aid will be
Mm.
conditional on the Gazans who receive it not returning to the places from which they arrive at the aid distribution sites. This is in the same meeting in which he said something you mentioned, Charmin, which is that the only obvious outcome for Gaza would be the Palestinians wishing to, no, would be for Palestinians wishing to emigrate out of the strip. Our main problem is finding receptive countries. Who's going to fund the GHF? It's going to be the Gulf nations. It's going to be Saudi Arabia. It's going to be Qatar. Humanitarian organizations are saying this aid plan undermines neutrality, impartiality, and independence, and is essentially putting aid in the hands of armed mercenaries who will be essentially, replacing the Israeli
Who's saying
army.
that? Who's saying that?
That's Amnesty Switzerland, and the
Mm.
UNICEF has also said the same. World Central Kitchen has said the same. The UN has said the same. That
Yeah.
this is all
And
violation of.
how do you in war make people sign a document saying you'll not return home ever? I mean, it's
Yeah. And last thing is just this. This is, again, Geneva-based foundation. Somebody's going to benefit from this, right? This is a private enterprise that
Mm.
is being going to receive Gulf money. So, of course, who's going to benefit? UG Solutions, Safe Reach Solutions. Who's going to benefit after them? Financial institutions like Goldman Sachs and others who are handling, the payments and the movement of money, because donor countries are going to be told, hey, you want to buy up some aid for Gaza? We're selling these little kits, right? Little food kits, little hygiene kits. If you donate today, you're gonna get an extra 10%. Who knows, how it's gonna be sold? for essentially help Israel maintain the illegal occupation of the territory and the forced displacement of the Palestinians. This is part of Trump's plan. This is not, an outlier. This is approved by the Israelis. So with this in mind, I want to hear from you, Karim, in particular. What do you make of this whole situation, right? Is there an actual interest from the U.S. government to ending this genocide and ending all the crimes that have been committed, or are we simply looking at a case of you've killed enough people, we'll help you occupy the strip, we'll help you build the Riviera that I want for Gaza, and we'll call it a ceasefire, and we'll call it humanitarian.
Listen, after Iraq and Afghanistan, the Americans have one purpose after wars is to make money off of cleaning up the stuff that they've helped cause. So, I mean, but can I just say something? I definitely want to hear from you, Karim, on this. But this construct may look ominous, but how many of the US's recent constructs have actually taken shape? They float a lot of ideas. And in the past, when the Americans said something and put a narrative on the table, it sort of took hold because nobody else was filling gaps, right? But now, most of their narratives are not taking hold. And I'd like us to discuss the IMAC corridor as
Mm,
as we go on down the line of our discussions, because that's
okay.
another project that looks, questionable. So I don't know if this one's going to take hold. Go ahead, Kenny.
Yeah, I'll take your second option. Of course, I think they want to stop the war because they acknowledge that the PR of the Israel is at its lowest, and they want if they want Israel to keep on surviving and have like international relations, Netanyahu should go. So they want a solution, even if it doesn't sound or feel right. You know what I mean? Because currently this is not a solution. I don't think like pushing people to the south and giving them aid.
And forcing
That
them to
means,
stay there, yeah.
yeah, yeah, it's absurd. I think, and of course, I think that as we mentioned before, Trump and his cabinet they are ignorant in international politics and history and geography, and he did many mistakes regarding this naming, for instance, Spain as a BRIC country, uh, saying that I stopped aid to Gaza and it was like or Palestine. I forgot the name, but apparently it was like a city in Africa and the African continent, and many of these things. So I think they are ignorant, and what the short history of Trump presidency shows us that we can't take him seriously because first he said that I will bomb the hell out of Yemen, and suddenly he stopped without any notice, and he said that
Hmm.
I will put tariffs on many countries, and nobody negotiated him, and he suddenly started to like
Lift them,
lower
yeah.
these tariffs,
Mhm.
and he said many things, and he did accomplish it, and especially this one. This is the most complicated case that he's talking about. So simple
Yeah, but
cases he couldn't do it. What about Gaza? You know what I mean?
we're hearing there's a lot of pressure on UN agencies on the humanitarian to just simply go along with the plan, and I feel like this is more of a Saudi plan than the US. You know what I mean? Or like the Israeli opposition, whatever that is, that are
Yeah, I don't
promoting
think
this.
any plan is going to pass muster unless it allows for um the um unless it allows for Palestinians in Gaza to return back to their areas and rebuild, not only get aid. I mean, it's just not palatable. Like, as you were saying now, Karim, like he's trying to fix Israel's PR as well. I mean, let's not forget this guy's a Zionist. But today, for instance, I read that, and I'll just read from it. Norway's $1.8 trillion sovereign wealth fund,
Mhm.
the largest in the world, has divested from Israel's Paz Retail and Energy. It previously divested from Israeli telecoms firm Bezek in September 2024. This comes days after Norway's Confederation of Trade Unions approved a comprehensive boycott of all trade and investment linked to Israel. This is Norway. We're going to see a whole bunch of these. And, I've always said to people, I know it's been like over a year and a half, but as as the censure against Israel and global distaste for Israel just grows, and there's no sign whatsoever that it's lessening. I mean, more than half of Americans now don't like Israel. This is the first. The legal cases, there'll be more space created for the legal cases against Israel and against companies doing business with Israel. And any major victory in any court in any major jurisdiction will set off a freezing effect um, across all of industry, all sectors um, in the West. So, this is just the tip of the iceberg, but I thought it was just a really interesting point because, Norway, the very nice Scandinavian countries have kind of been atrocious. They're atrocious on Syria,
Mm.
atrocious on Israel, atrocious on all the issues that they used to, you know, be pretty decent on.
Yeah, and also because the war in Gaza, it's creating also internal conflicts in many countries, especially in the West. And for instance, what happened in the United States and at the universities, and currently what's happening in Texas, there's a city that said that they don't want their taxes to go to Israel. They calculated it was like, I forgot, about from $4 to $14 million, and they asked the mayor, and we want this money to build our city, and he refused. So, and this has started in many cities in the United States. Now, many cities are calculating where our money, our tax money, is going. And of
Yeah,
course, what happens in the UK regarding the companies that sell weapons or materials to Israeli companies, and many stuff. This is يعني, I think Netanyahu doesn't feel this, but the West feel this pressure because they serve Israel since 70 years, and now the serving of Israel is backfiring inside these countries, which is a first thing in my
and
opinion.
they're making people sign things too. If you want any federal loans or federal aid, you have to sign a document um, supporting Israel. If you want to become a citizen of our country, like in Germany, you can't criticize Israel. I mean, the thing is, there are more right wing, anti immigrant governments that are gaining popularity, governments or parties. And as much as these anti immigrant parties are viewed to therefore support Israel, because fascism across the board, right? Allies stick together, birds of a feather, and all that. Um, they're thinking, why are we? Marjorie Green, was it Marjorie Green, the US Congresswoman who's just like awful, came out and questioned why we should be passing laws. This was a bill that was being argued in Congress, I think, last week.
Yeah, to
Why
find
should
people
we be
like $1 million or something for like
finding people
criticizing
for
Israel, something like that.
yeah, yeah, and that is something we're gonna hear from more right-wing parties, but yeah.
There was this Washington Post report I was reading before I connected with you guys, in talking about this whole like Netanyahu rift, in which they talk about an advisor, a Trump advisor, and he says inside MAGA we're not fans of Israel. We're not or at the
Mm.
very least, I guess what they meant was of this like tendency to put their interest before ours. And I think we're seeing now the repercussions of that. I just want to mention right now, I was looking, the new democracy perception index poll was released. China for the first time surpasses the United States in popularity across the world, and Israel the worst rated country of those included in the list. So exactly what you're
What
talking
was
about,
this
Charmaine.
poll? What was this poll?
The 2025, hold on, 2025 Democracy Perception Index. It's being reported by Politico. But
Oh, wow.
Good.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
very
I just
interesting.
wanted also to mention that even China, they did like several videos against the United States, propaganda videos, and the United States in its turn did some propaganda videos. So one of the videos shows that Netanyahu rules the United States, and there's a Chinese man telling them, "No, Netanyahu rules you." And there's an American says, "No, no, we rule each other." So it's now a mockery across the world.
I didn't see
Indeed.
any US propaganda videos. I guess they weren't compelling because most of the Americans on TikTok are sharing the Chinese videos.
They're
It
fascinated by.
was huge. This tariff thing was very badly handled
Yeah.
by the White House. I mean, you couldn't ask for worse. And now, of course, we're finding out that just was it yesterday or today that the reports that Beijing and Washington have struck a deal, a very good deal, but we've yet to see the details. So let's wait on that.
Yeah, indeed. I think another topic that it's interesting for us is the travels of the Syrian President Ahmad al-Shara, who was in France last week, meeting with Emmanuel Macron and the Lebanese president as well, who was there in Paris. As the killings continue in Syria, as the kidnappings continue in Syria, sadly, we're seeing this just become the norm at this point. I want to hear from you guys. What do you make of because Syria also announced a big deal with Saudi Arabia and Qatar announced that they're going to take care of their World Bank debt, and then Turkey announces that they're going to give them like 60 million cubic meters of natural gas over the next several months, including electricity. They're also going to give them some megawatts of electricity for reconstruction. Is Ahmad al-Shara the face of this new Middle East that we keep hearing about from Benjamin Netanyahu?
He's the Rambo of the Middle East.
The Rambo of the Middle
Yeah,
East.
you remember?
Listen, he's literally the poster child. I mean, with as Zelensky was for Europe,
Yeah.
of a new transformation. But the thing is, as much as we've discovered about Zelensky, we don't know, just rumors, coke sniffing, corrupt as heck, siphoning off money. The Ukrainians are reselling US and foreign arms to dodgy markets. Just, um, uh, dragging Ukrainian males off the street and forcing them into suicide battles. Things like that. I think wait till folks catch up with Ahmed al-Shara. I mean, just wait. The guy is Al-Qaeda. He was a deputy head of ISIS. Okay. And now Macron, rolls out the red carpet for him. Shara has been seen all across the Gulf. He's just had 2 phone calls with the Emirates and the Saudis. He's trying to get money into Syria, but I know what's good. I mean, we believe what's going to happen, despite his promise otherwise, that Syria is going to become a federalized state, divided into 3 or 4 or more chunks. The weakening of the state overall, and will this happen? Will anyone push back? Will the areas that are no longer controlled by the government Damascus actually thrive more? I mean, the stripping off of the veils, now covering Shara is going to continue, and it's going to be uglier and uglier and uglier as the facts come to light. We will actually have an article this week or early next on um, why Western countries, why Western-led institutions like the IMF, etc., are in such a rush to get a piece of Shara and what's coming, despite the fact that this man is a UN designated terrorist. His organization, HTS, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, is a UN designated terrorist organization. The Americans may have removed him very swiftly from their terrorism list, and the
They're
$10
most
million
wanted.
their $10 million bounty that they had on his head. But the rest of the world has not moved forward. Well, why are Western countries
You know,
backing
was,
this terrorist? Because they're behind him. They're the ones who created terror in Syria for, since 2011. It's their go-to plan. They did it in Afghanistan, they did it in Iraq, they did it in Syria, they did it in Libya. What more proof do we need?
Yeah, and also we have to not to forget that he committed crimes in 3 countries: Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon. It's not only.
Not that these leaders mind. Shara
I know.
is on the guest list to arrive in Iraq for the Arab Summit next week. And is it next
didn't they
week or even
outlaw
this week?
protests? I Let me check that actually
Yeah, yeah,
because
yeah. There have been protests, and I think they've said they're going to arrest. They banned protests in Iraq
they did
during the
something.
Arab Summit. They banned protests. Okay, you cannot protest these goons who are going to be arriving
Yeah.
in private jets,
They have banned all protests in Baghdad from May 11th to May 20th ahead of the Arab summit. Security
Yeah.
forces have been instructed to take legal action against any protesters.
Can you imagine?
Uh,
Screw your
and
citizens, support the terrorist who basically killed your citizens for over a decade, okay? Who was imprisoned in your prisons twice for under terror charges. The
now Baghdad is
Iraqis,
flying the new Syrian flag. There was already pictures of them
the
ready.
Iraqis are the biggest chumps in this region right now. I can't imagine anyone. It's so sad. It's so
Jordanians.
sad. Yeah.
If you guys have, if I don't know if you guys want to add anything more about this.
So I just want to tell our viewers to please share, comment, and you have any questions, we read your comments.
We always read your comments. We always read your comments. We know who's Team Karim and who's Team Charmin here all the time. Do you guys want
And
to get
Team
into
Esteban,
and Team
don't be
Esteban,
shy, okay, and
which is
humble.
you
You
know
have a lot of supporters. They come in full
I
Spanish
do actually.
and they're like,
Yeah.
Esteban, mi amor. Blah, 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 blah.
Thank you all for that. Thank you for all. We love hearing the love from all of you. Do you guys want to have before we wrap up this week? Let's get into what happened between India and Pakistan maybe last week, which
Oh
was
my God. Yeah.
one of the most interesting developments in a week that was just full of interesting developments, right? So let me just set the stage very quickly. This happens a few hours after the announcement, right? The surprise U.S. announcement with Yemen of their ceasefire. Why do I mention this? Because I know Trump said that this was like the Houthis don't want us to bomb them anymore. They're just tired of being bombed. That wasn't true. That wasn't true. It was the U.S. saying we cannot deal with this. This is we're never going to win this war. We don't want a second Vietnam. So a few hours after this, India and Pakistan they conduct the biggest aerial dogfight since World War II. They deploy 125 jets, both sides, and that for this dogfight that lasts about an hour. And then afterwards, this news starts coming out that India has lost a bunch of planes. And the Pakistanis, the Pakistani prime minister, the Pakistani defense minister, vice admiral, something or other, all testify in front of parliament, and they say we down 5 Indian jets. The Indians say
Now 6, they're
it never
claiming.
happened. They also said drones, right? So maybe
Mm.
I don't have the actual figure next to me, but they said 5 jets and also some drones. Here's the where the very interesting part comes in, and this is where I know you guys are going to want to jump in. Pakistan, the Pakistani Air Force uses Chinese jets. They have the JC-10 advanced Chinese fighter jet. This is the first time that a Chinese-made fighter jet in a real combat situation faces off against Western-made weapons that the Indian Air Armed Forces has, in particular the French Rafale and a couple of Russian-made planes as well.
Mix.
These are the ones that get down by the Chinese jets. So all of a sudden, on between Thursday and Friday, all of these, even financial news outlets are talking about this because they're talking about how I would say inadvertently, Pakistan changed the rules of the game by showing that all of a sudden Western technology is not the biggest dog in the yard when it comes to warfare. And you have all of these war analysts saying, we need to study this. This is just like unprecedented what happened. And so, this is what happened, right? Pakistan, the Islamic Republic of Pakistan shows the world that you can actually go to war with a Western armed opponent and succeed. So, what does that leave us?
Well, I want to say that, poor France, not only did they lose customers for their Hermes and Louis Vuitton bags, a few
Oh my
weeks
God,
ago,
yes.
but they also lost a whole bunch of military contracts potentially. Rafale, how do you say it? Rafale?
Rafale, I don't know. Rafale, I think, yeah.
Rafale.
Rafael, we say it in Arabic,
Rafael,
Rafael.
Yeah,
Rafael.
their stocks went plummeting as soon as the news came out of Pakistan downing their fighter jets. So poor France. And then the head of state is meeting with the head of Al Qaeda. It's just I don't know. It's like kind of the best time to be alive in the world and the worst time to be alive in the world.
This is
Um,
like China just continues to get W's without doing anything. They're just
yes,
sitting there being like,
yes, yes. And okay, India's arsenal, okay, also includes heavy duty Russian equipment. India and Russia were allies for a very, very long time. And Pakistan, the US were allies for a very, very long time. Now, in the last few years, the US has been openly dissing the Pakistanis, okay, blaming them for terror stuff that the US created, okay? Imran Khan was very vocal about how they don't, Pakistan does not want to be involved in the US's war on terror anymore because all it's done is bring terror into Pakistan. And that's true. There's just no debate about it, you know. So then they've undermined their own ally. They coup d'etat their own ally, ostensibly by getting rid of Imran Khan, and there was big backlash, but don't forget Pakistan has also been in China's sights for a very, very long time. The, China-Pakistan Economic Corridor is a crucial, uh, program for China's Belt and Road Initiative. It's hit a lot of snags because you have a lot of, corrupt US paid off politicians in, Pakistan's National Assembly, and who knows, maybe it's army, et cetera, and its intelligence services. But that is a train that has been moving forward regardless of how pro-US Pakistan may be otherwise. Because Pakistan's poor and nobody's coming out to help it. During the dogfight, okay, by the way, we have an article on this dropping today by the Cradle's military correspondent who, gives some more details of what was involved or not, clarifies what's rumor and what's true. Um, he says that this is the single biggest dogfight since World War II. Don't look at Russia and Ukraine because there's no parity between those two countries. One is so much more superior militarily, meaning Russia, than the other. In this case, you have two nuclear powers um, whose conventional armies, are not, comparable in the sense that India is viewed as a more powerful conventional force, has a much larger population, has, a much bigger army, has, much bigger defense budget, et cetera, et cetera. But where Pakistan could not compete, with all these different components of India's military force, what it did was focus heavily on its air force. And in this battle, and like Pakistan's never won any clash with India since the inception of both states. Let's be clear about that. In this case, Pakistan got to showcase its strategy of building up its air force capabilities, and it did so on a dime. In other words, the Chinese fighter jets and the Chinese projectiles and missiles that were employed in this dogfight did more than whatever India had on its side, and it's in arsenal. It's arsenal, and let's not forget that many Israeli components in
yeah,
Israel in
yeah.
India's arsenal now
The
when
drones.
it comes to yeah, yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, and Pakistan relied on Turkish drones, whereas India relied on Israeli drones. That is also a big plus for Turkey's drone industry, which is relatively new, but has been showcased in the Ukraine war.
I just wanted to say very quickly, Pakistan, the only country outside of China to use these planes. So really, Pakistan was the only one that could have shown this. What do you make of this, Karim? I know this is a topic that you enjoy a lot.
Yeah, I think the West wanted the conflict to be longer than 3 days, as what happened previously, because how it started is very weird, and the timing is also weird.
Yeah.
Last time we talked about it, we said that it's all because of China and they want to weaken China. But what happened? It was like the completely the opposite.
Mm.
Since ages, and the West they say that China is weak, and because they don't have proven proven equipment and battle airplanes, missiles, or anything. But currently, we saw that Chinese jets and Chinese missiles were able to down a very expensive, very sophisticated airplane, as the West claim, which is the Russian Rafael, and also a Soviet era MiG 29 and Su 30.
Yes.
And in return, we didn't see any of these Chinese planes coming down from the sky as we saw the Rafaels, the French one. And this is very important because not only that the Chinese jet were superior, also their missiles, the air-to-air missiles were also superior because they were able to down uh, we can say three French airplanes that have completely different technology than the Russian ones. And we know that who is the best in this? We know the West and Russia. And now suddenly we have China that downed both in one fight. So, and I want to mention
Chinese
something.
Wow.
bags, Chinese
Yeah.
fighter jets, Chinese everything, you know?
And I want just to mention something that during this, when it happened, and Pakistan said that we downed 3 or 4 planes, uh, and the credit they wanted to post this, I told them no, I can't believe that Pakistan
You
they
couldn't
were
believe it.
able to down 3 planes in like 15 minutes. Many people online they are saying within 24 hours. It was not within 24 hours. It's in the
Mm.
first hour that we heard this, and I told them
Yes.
no, calm down. I can't believe this. So this is really shocking, and this also accelerated the end of the conflict because it only lasted 3 days. I think the West and maybe India wanted it to last more, but if you see what happened, if I was India and seeing that the billions of dollars that I paid for Rafael planes were down in the first hour, and also Pakistan claimed that they destroyed an S-400. We don't know if this is true or
The
not, but
anti-air battery.
yeah, but the planes are true. And also worldwide, we didn't see anybody standing with India. I didn't see any official statement saying that no, we stand with India, which is very bad image for India also. And we saw Turkey and maybe Iran made some comments, and even China made comments. No, you can feel that they support Pakistan more, but India, nobody supported India, unfortunately for the Indians.
And during this time, during those few days, the IMF fast-tracked a loan to Pakistan. You know,
Yeah.
the IMF just dangling the stuff Pakistan for years and then just boom, loan.
There's
I
all.
mean, talk about how military power projection can just change politics
I
in a
just want to add
nanosecond.
something, Sharmin. 2 days ago, the Pakistani army announced that they downed 77 Harop drones, and eventually they are Israeli drones.
77.
They said
And
77, yes.
so here's, where why did I start this whole discussion talking about Yemen? Because Yemen has also been downing, all of these advanced drones from the US with an even much more rudimentary. Yemen doesn't have JC-10s. They don't have like a Chinese air defenses. They have whatever the Iranians were able to get to them and whatever they have been able to build themselves. And I think this is very interesting what you said, Sherman, about a military power, how it changes the scales, not just of on the militaristic terms, but also like in economic, in geopolitical, in political, etc. I think we saw that with Yemen as well. We're seeing it with Pakistan. I want to mention very quickly, Putin is said to visit Tehran. This is just coming out. Vladimir Putin is going to visit Tehran in the coming days to meet with Masoud Pezeshkian and Ayatollah Khamenei. Many things happen in these couple of weeks.
We have to
Oh
go back,
man,
Sharmin.
Putin heard about Kubi there and decided to hightail it there. What is this dish? I must try it. Can't be better than Russian borscht. Look, I mean, it's crazy, right? It's crazy. We have to spend just a little bit of time talking about, what you were saying, Esteban, like, why now? Why now? This is going to be discussed behind closed doors and in public in India, I think, for some time now, because India came in with a great deal of confidence and arrogance. They were looking
Yeah.
for a fight. Pakistan said, look,
Yeah.
it wasn't us. And they were like, we're ready to go. Cut off Pakistan's water access from the Indus River. I mean, that's a declaration of war. Any way you look at it, Pakistan said it has to react because this is the ultimate declaration of war, right? Why did India come in so strong and so hard? What did they have that made them believe that they would come out of this with something in hand because they really lost everything. And then who gave them that confidence? India's, won't act alone in this way necessarily. I mean, they're quite deep with the US, in these past few years. And I think for sure they would have received at least a green light from the Americans or encouragement. But why would the US be vested in this really, as y'all said, is to cut off to cripple China because uh, Pakistan's so important economically for China and its BRI project.
Mhm.
But we wrote last week about the Israel Chinese absolute diversion of not is diversion divergence of interests, and it must be mentioned that IMEC, a U.S. backed project, I think it's International Middle East Corridor,
Mhm.
which will link India to Israel via Persian Gulf, you know, states, uh, is a big construct. It is a big construct. It brings India absolutely on board US/Israel. Okay. Um, India also is a principal partner in the International North South Transportation Corridor, INSTIC, between Russia, Iran, and India, and which is operational and working very effectively. Um, this is India playing, okay, with both sides. It's a member of the SCO, it's a member of BRICS, yet it's playing so hard with the Americans on IMEC. China doesn't want IMEC to happen. It's in China's interest to make sure Pakistan does a clean swipe at India in this, okay? So that India, reassesses its global position and its position vis-a-vis multipolar organizations. So there's a lot happening here that is not actually being written about in detail because everyone's covering the next event. There's too many things happening. At the same time
Yes.
as this is going on, Moscow hosts it's a Victory Day parade celebrating, you
The
know,
80th anniversary.
the 80th anniversary, a big anniversary, the end of, celebrating the end of World War II and the immense, immense sacrifices, human and otherwise, incurred by the Soviet Union for many years to defend against Nazism, against fascism. Really,
Mhm.
reliably, the only country that consistently fights Nazis in this world, because as we can see, the West is very much cozying up to Nazis in Israel, in India, in Ukraine, you name it. Al Qaeda in Syria too. So
The Arabs, yes.
this I think the celebration was notable optically because of who participated. You saw it was so the armed forces of a number of former Soviet republics marched in the parade from like Kyrgyzstan to actually I don't remember. I think
At Mahmoud
Belarus.
Kazakhstan.
Abbas.
Mahmoud Abbas was hurt.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, wait. I'm trying to get to the important geopolitical part, not the like, the TikTok, uh, the TikTok,
Nonsense, yeah.
yeah. So, and then, Chinese President Xi Jinping was right by Putin's side. We saw Burkina Faso's Ibrahim
Ibrahim Traore.
Traore,
Mhm.
God bless the man, standing there, elbow to elbow with Putin. Um, uh, People asked whether Iran was there, and we couldn't find anything on that initially, but I just saw some social media posts of some US bloggers meeting Iranian generals in the crowd, IRGC
Mm.
generals in the crowd, who knows.
Well,
But here the
what's his
thing
name?
was that the
Mhm.
people, no Western nation that was essentially saved by the
By
Soviet
the Red
Union,
Army, yeah.
yeah, by the Red Army and its defeat of Nazi Germany on the Eastern Front was in attendance. I mean, really shameful, given the
Mhm.
sacrifices. But the global South was there in full force. Um, Former
Didn't
Soviet
the
republics, even
EU,
Laos, even Laotian,
Laotians?
even Laotians marched in the parade, their military forces. So interesting. Russia can no longer view itself as a European power or wannabe power, but really Russia's Asian connections are coming so much to the fore. I think something like 80% of Russia is inside the Asian continent. So we're seeing Russia having had the opportunity to work more closely with Europe and being thoroughly dissed by the Europeans for, more than 2 decades, 3 decades, are such players in Asia now. And I think that was a very interesting optic as India-Pakistan was going on, and China helped Pakistan beat the unbeatable, you know. Also on Ukraine, Putin said no to the to the U.S. Proposed ceasefire, 30-day, whatever. He has to. He has said from the beginning, all the oblasts have to stay within Russia. No NATO forces inside Ukraine. It's just, I mean, those are non-negotiables. And I think eventually the Americans will, if Trump wants a victory on that ceasefire front, he's going to have to give Putin that. And the fact is, Putin has the upper hand by far. Trump just wants to announce a victory. How quickly did Trump rush in to take credit for the India-Pakistan ceasefire? Astounding, astounding. Before
I think
the
that,
actual actors could say
yeah,
anything, Trump
before they
was,
actually announced it, yeah.
yeah, I don't even know if he took credit. He just wanted to be the first to announce it, thereby wallowing in, the peacemaker thing that actually China has attained diligently over the last few years. Iran, Saudi normalization and reconciliation, et cetera, et
Mhm.
cetera. So
And
this
also,
is what's been happening in the background of the India-Pakistan
Mhm.
dogfight.
I think it's important that Putin said that he's willing to sit on the table and talk with Zelensky.
Zelensky agreed.
Yeah,
That's also
and it
incredible.
is in Turkey, and it's not in France, and he
No.
didn't ask any European country to attend the meeting. This is also shows a shift because usually these countries are the ones who are in the meetings and dictating other nations to
Mm.
do. And
Uh,
also, I wanted to say something, Sharmin. I don't know if we can put it, we can, and we can't. But for instance, I just wanted to mention that
Mm.
yesterday the Israeli army declared that they will bomb Al Hudaydah. Eventually, till
yes,
now, they didn't bomb Al Hudaydah,
they
and
ordered evacuation, right?
they ordered evacuation, and they didn't bomb Hudaydah. But of course, Saudi Arabian media said that they bombed Al Hudaydah, and then they put a breaking that an Iranian facility was destroyed in Yemen. Although nobody bombed Yemen yesterday. I took a screenshot, we can see it, but I just wanted to say this because it's absurd and this shows how they manipulate the media. And it's Al Arabiya. Everybody in the Arab world, unfortunately, watches Al Arabiya and they take it as a source.
Oh, ridiculous.
Well, it is like you said, it's a shift, right? It's a shift that's happening, and it's something we, of course, are gonna have to stay on. Every day. Every day feels like a week
Karim
sometimes.
also had gotten some numbers on more international airlines stopping flights to Lod Airport in Tel Aviv, or Ben Gurion Airport in Lod. Um, that's continuing, right? Are there
Yeah,
more jumping on board, or are they expanding
they are
their
expanding. Yeah, I can
ban?
read. I have the most important ones. We have United Airlines, which is an American Airlines, Delta Airlines also, uh, Lufthansa,
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 Lufthansa, the German,
Lufthansa, the German. Also, the Germans also Air France, British Airways, Ryanair, Wizz
mm,
Air, uh,
ITA Airways,
yeah,
a bunch,
ITA,
Wizz Air.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
There are a lot of Ethiopians airline, even Air India,
So it's more than the
Liberia.
10 that we were talking about
Yeah,
before.
yeah.
No,
These
it
are
is.
the
It's like 15 or something more, probably.
yeah.
Yeah.
There's 13 major airlines and like 30 to 40 smaller airlines.
Wow.
And the Israeli media also reported that um, 34% less Sorry, the Hebrew media also reported that the flights from and into Ben Gurion Airport has decreased by 34%.
So, guys, before we go, we just talked about it a few minutes ago. Apparently, AFP is reporting that Ahmad al-Shara will not participate in the Arab League summit scheduled to be held in Baghdad on Saturday. Go figure.
And the Cradle wins. We did make that prediction. You know, we really like to disagree with each other here at the Cradle and hash out ideas. So, you know, there were bets on the table about this. Okay, good to hear.
I'm checking by Iraqi media for confirmation, but this is obviously something we'll stay on. So I think with that, we can wrap up for this week. Before we go, I want to tell our viewers we are going to have an extra segment available for Patreon subscribers in which we will discuss the fourth round of US-Iran nuclear negotiations and a continuation of some of the tales that we have from Karim and Sharmin and their visit to Tehran, including the visit to where exactly?
The Tehran nuclear reactor.
Ooh,
Oh
very
my
interesting.
God. So this
So-
was a highlight. And in order to hear us discuss it, you're just going to have to become a Patreon. Please do anyways. If you're a regular viewer and if you're a subscriber, there's a point at which, you know, please invest in us, you know, so we can do more of these.
Show us some love, people. Show us some love. And we thank you all for joining us this week. I want to again remind you to leave a like, to share, to subscribe, to follow us on X and on Telegram, and to please check out the Patreon. For the Cradle News Roundup, my name is Esteban Carrillo. I have been joined by Karim Shami and Sharmin Nawaz.